Y'all, our perimeter's been violated and our orchard is under attack. We've got some deer that have been coming in and taking advantage of the growing tips on our fruit trees. We've done a lot of work to put these trees out here. We want to do something to protect them. That's what we're going to be looking at today. So when we come out here and we look at this pear tree, we're expecting to see that the branches are continuing to grow out on the tree and that the number of leaves are continuing to increase. One that's actually growing nicely, but this one kind of got terminated and had to start over again. And that tells me that a deer's been in here eating on the tree. Plus these branches were a little bit longer. So some deer has come along and just nibbled off the tips of these branches. So here in the orchard, we've mentioned before that we intend to get sheep and goats here on the property. We will be running them through the orchard here. So we do have to find some way to protect the trees from the goats and sheep. But in the meantime, we're gonna have to protect them from the deer as well. So today we're gonna look at 3 different layers of fencing. We're gonna look at the perimeter fencing, the paddock fencing, and then finally, how do we deal with protecting the trees? Not only is the gate an important place to pay attention to, but the rest of the perimeter fence also has to be taken into account. One area that you want to pay particular attention to, right down here at the bottom of the fence. Not everywhere along the fence line is going to be perfect. There's going to be places where you can have things slip right underneath the fence. This is the barrier fence between our property and the neighbor's property. And also just above us here, you can see that there is actually a hole. So the fencing wire has gotten damaged and there's a big hole here. And while this hole may not let a deer in, it certainly would let a dog in. So these are going to be areas of concern in the perimeter fence. And we definitely need to take care of those, but today we're going to focus on the orchard. But you need to make sure the perimeter fence is tight, meaning the entire property is surrounded. Down here at the very bottom of the property, we do have some missing fencing. And it's not missing because it was never strung here, it's missing because it was put up through the tree. And it's just 3 strands of barbed wire. Definitely not enough to slow down or stop a deer. So we will need to build a bottom perimeter fence if we want to keep everything tight. Besides the perimeter fencing, there is one other type of fencing that we'll be using to contain and hold the goats and sheep once they get here, and that's for the paddocks. There are 2 different types of paddock fencing. One is the temporary fencing that we'll be setting up to contain the sheep themselves. And then the second type is the cross fencing on the property, which becomes the anchor point for that temporary fencing. Currently on this property, we do have a nice sort of X that's marked out on the property right about at the center line. So it's this cross fencing that gives us not only the anchor point for the temporary fencing, but it also allows us to be able to provide power for a hot wire to some netting that we'll be using to contain the goats and sheep. Right now, it doesn't provide any protection for the orchard, and it's not really designed to. This is for later on. Right now, let's get back to the orchard. So we've been running a little bit of an experiment out in the orchard. We took some scrap fencing, only 4-foot tall fencing, and we wrapped some of our trees, in particular the peach trees, and we also wrapped the mulberry tree that's out there. We had seen definite damage on the mulberry tree from the deer, and it got a much larger section of fencing around it. So it's got about a 4-foot loop around it. And since we put that up, we haven't seen any problem from the deer. They haven't been able to reach the plant. They haven't even made an effort to get to it. The peaches, on the other hand, got 4-foot tall fencing, but it's in pretty tight to the plant. Well, the plant that was a little bit taller than the fencing did get nibbled on by the deer. We've got to open up to a nice big circle to kind of keep the deer as far away from the tree as possible. So we're creating tiny yards around each one of the trees. And this allows us to bring our protective barrier right up to the tree level and do something specific about protecting each one. By putting this 4-foot wide circle around the tree, we keep the deer far enough back so that even the tallest of them who might want to try to reach over are discouraged from doing so. Now, this is no guarantee for the deer. This is really just the strongest deterrent we can put in place right now. So we bought 100 feet of fencing. We've cut that into 12.5-foot long panels. That's going to give us our 4-foot wide circle. All we got to do now is transport some of this out into the orchard and start getting it put together around the trees. So this fencing's not that difficult to move around once you get it cut in 12.5-foot sections. We just need to peel one out. We're going to set this up around the pear tree. And the whole point behind this is just to keep the deer as far away from the tree as we possibly can. So we are literally creating a tiny yard around the pear tree. So all we've done here is just left the horizontal wire a little bit long. So we're going to match the sides up and then just fold the wire over. We don't need a really tight connection. It's not like the deer are going to come up here and push on the fence. They'll just want to reach over and it'll spook them because they're rubbing up against this fencing, and they'll move on to something that's a little bit easier for them to get to. So this will be more than enough to keep the deer away from the tree. No need to stake this down or anything. It'll be sufficient. Not so the goats. The goats probably come in here and lean on this and push it over. So we'll have to get something a little bit more substantial once we bring the goats up into the orchard. But we'll also have their paddock fencing to work with to try to keep them away from the trees wherever possible. But allowing the goats and sheep to run through the orchard is going to make sure that we have good control over the grasses and weeds that are in here as well. And we won't be wasting all of that great fodder that's on the ground. Right now, our primary concern, just keeping the deer off so these trees have a chance to set down some solid roots. And just like that, we have a basic yard set up for this little plum tree. Hopefully this is going to keep the deer away from it. Our other plum has already been really decimated by the deer coming up in here. This plum tree in particular kind of set the size of the circle that we needed. This was sort of the minimum size circle I could build and still be able to surround this tree. Just so happened that that works out to 12.5 feet of fencing, which was a perfect measurement for getting all of the fencing used up in 4-foot wide circles. Hopefully this is going to do the trick. In our journey to return to the land, labor, and life, we've discovered that protecting the land is a #1 priority. If we're going to have all of this food production, we're going to have to do something to protect it from the wildlife. Let us know in the comments what you're doing on your land. If you're doing anything to protect your orchard, we'd love to hear about it. We do need to figure out exactly how we're going to secure these trees against the goats and sheep that are coming soon. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, would you please take a moment and do that? While you've got that window open, hit the thumbs up icon. That's going to let the algorithm know you enjoyed the video. They'll share it out with more people. We'll see you next time.